I'd like to first recognize that we're on the traditional territories of the Métis and Quantum First Nation. Thank you for everybody that took time out of their evening and their day to attend, be part of the electoral process, and learn a little bit about the candidates. The Ridge Meadows Chamber is hosting this all candidates debate for Maple Ridge East riding. Candidates listed on the Election BC website have been contacted by the Chamber of Commerce and invited to participate. This riding has been slightly changed from Maple Ridge Mission riding before. It includes State Falls, Silver Hill, Ruskin, Wannock, Webster's Corner, Albion, and Yenavin communities, with eastern boundaries following Stave Lake and Silverdale Creek. The questions have been submitted from our community, and as there were some that were quite similar, we have combined them where appropriate. There will be no questions from the floor for this event, and the candidates are not aware of the questions. For each question, the candidates will have 3 minutes to respond. There is a timer that they'll be able to see that's on the front table to help them manage the length of their answers. There's also a 15-second warning sign and an end of time limit sign that will be shown to the candidate at the appropriate times. I also want to remind you that if you have specific questions for any of the candidates, you can reach them through their party websites. Now I'd like to welcome the candidates from the BCMP incumbent MLA, Paul Dean. Lawrence Mark of the Conservative Party of BC has chosen not to attend tonight. And in light of that, we will continue with the same debate questions from Mr. Deeth of the BCMP, and we will give him up to 3 minutes to answer each question. If there's any clarification needed, I might ask for some clarification around your answers. I'd also like to introduce the Chamber team. My name is Jerry Koch. I'm the president of the Ridge Meadows Chamber. Down at the table, our CEO, Christy Meyer, and our events and engagement coordinator, Darylyn Bonwood. Before we get into any opening statements, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Deeth, if you don't mind to give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about Bob Deeth, how you got here, where you grew up, those sorts of things. Just a little bit of a personal introduction.
Well, thanks, Jerry, and thank you so much, Christy and Dara. We've done such great work for this. Really appreciate it. I also wanted to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territories of the Métis and Quantum First Nations today, and just wanted to recognize that. Well, me, I was born in Hong Kong. We moved here in the 60s with my folks, and I became a citizen in 72. Grew up on the North Shore, went to school at University of Victoria, where I got my law degree, and came back to Vancouver. Worked as a lawyer for many years, mostly in the entertainment industry, but also in real estate. And also a musician. I've spent many years as a professional musician as well as being an entertainment lawyer. And then for a period of time, I also ran Music BC. I have 5 kids. So they are amazing, and they're all in their 20s, and they all went to school here. We grew up in Maple Ridge. I've been here for about 22 years. It's such an amazing place to bring a family up. They all went to Albion and SRT, have made great friends. I used to coach hockey. From that, I've made all sorts of great friends in the community that are still here to this day, and just love the people here, love the community, and I'm so grateful actually to have had the kids grow up here. And married to Kim, who everyone who knows Kim, you know, they know she's an amazing person. She works in healthcare out of St. Paul's, and she's just anybody who's in public office. If you have a partner who supports you, you're a very lucky person, and I'm a very lucky man. So that's me, Jerry.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate that, Bob, just getting to know you a little bit. Let's start with the opening statement. We'll give you 3 minutes. The timer is on the table here, so if you want to provide us with an opening statement, please.
Sure, I'm very, very pleased to be here, and I just off the top, and I probably won't mention it again, but I am disappointed that the candidate for the Conservatives isn't here to debate with me, because I do feel that these events are important. I think it's important to listen to the community, to be able to respond to the needs of the community. And if you don't come to these public engagements, you can't be said to have listened to the questions that people are asking and be able to answer them. And the other thing from my point of view is I had a lot of questions too. Like, how are you going to pay for some of these things, and how are you going to not pay for the things that you're going to cut? All those sort of things, we can't ask those questions. So enough said. So as far as choosing a candidate, I think it's really important to consider three things. I'm an incumbent candidate, so I've had 2 terms as an MLA, and I'm really pleased that I got some really, really interesting roles in government. I was the chair of the Finance Committee, did 12 reports with that committee and made some, I think, positive changes to that committee. I was also a caucus chair for a period of time, and during the pandemic, I was appointed as the parliamentary secretary for arts and film. And it was a really tough time for the creative industries, for arts and culture, and I was very honored actually to be part of that. Also, I was really interested for the last 4 years. I've been on Treasury Board, which is a cabinet committee. I'm not in cabinet, but they do have private members in cabinet, and I really, really enjoyed that work. So that was my background in terms of the work I've done. And I think that's important to look at. The other important thing to look at, I think, in a candidate is what has that candidate done in the community? And I'm so proud to work with Lisa Bear, who is the MLA here, and Pam Alexis, who's the MLA in Mission. I think, we really went to bat for Pitt Meadows, for Maple Ridge, for Mission, together as a team. And I think we got a lot of great things. We got Pitt Meadows High School, we got Mission High School, we got Eric Langdon, we'll talk about that a little bit later. For healthcare, we've got a CT scanner in Mission, we got an MRI in Ridge Meadows. We've been building housing, which we'll talk a bit about later, and education is so important. Healthcare is very important, and of course, we'll talk a lot more about housing as well. The other consideration, I think, is what does your party stand for? And so I've got to say, I'm really honored to have worked with David Eby and the BC NDP. He is a person of action. When he took over as Attorney General, he fought. He took the dumpster fire of ICBC and he fixed it. He went after money launderers. As Premier, he has been taking bold steps for healthcare, for housing, for affordability, for education, building the roads, building the hospitals, building the schools, and that's what we need. So we'll have more time to talk about some of these things, but I really, really appreciate you taking these things into consideration.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, the candidates are not aware of the questions. They've been apprised of the topics. So we're going to start with the questions. Sure. So under economy and business, small businesses are struggling. What specific policies or initiatives will you implement to support small businesses?
Yeah, I mean, particularly small businesses are so important to our community, and we have so many great small businesses in Maple Ridge and Mission, and so proud of the work that the Chamber does and the BIA and everybody. Very, very happy to be part of that work that's been doing. And there's been challenges. When we came out of the pandemic, there was a lot of challenges, and I know our government had some programs, some loan programs to support them. There's issues around public safety. We've give up to $3,000 now for if there's vandalism or trying to update your business so that you can fight against that. Some big things that we did too is we looked at the employer health tax, and it was about 80% of businesses were exempt from that, and we actually increased the threshold of that by $500,000. So for payroll, we were able to get from 80% of businesses up to 90% of businesses aren't paying that employer health tax. So it's really the medium and bigger size businesses. So that's a commitment to small business. We're also looking at, we reduced the tax on small business by 20%, which was really important. So moving forward, I think listening to businesses, I know public safety is a big issue for businesses locally. Recently, the Premier announced having involuntary care for some folks, for example, who have just become too ill to be able to take care of themselves, or become a danger to themselves and to the public, and they really need that sort of long-term help. And unfortunately, these are the folks who can't stay in the shelters or the supportive housing because they tend to get kicked out. So there's a whole continuum of help that we need to give folks. But I think it's also a really good example of how we work well with our cities. And I've got to say, the relationship that Lisa and I have, for example, with Mayor Rumi and the council in Maple Ridge, or myself with Paul Horn and his council in Mission, is excellent. And at the end of the day, when I think about what's important, is all levels of government need to work together. And I think for business, that's really important, really important. And some key things, we'll get to it, but also housing and childcare are actually really important for businesses, because if you want to be able to employ folks, they need to be able to live in your community. And if they can't afford that to live in the community, they're going to be commuting in, and there's all sorts of issues, and childcare as well. And we are giving up to some families up to $900 a month in terms of help with childcare. We're opening way more $10 a day childcare systems throughout the community, and that'll really help small businesses as well. But we can circle back to that. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks. And the next question under the same category, the construction industry faces a growing skill shortage. How do you plan to support skilled trades, training, and apprenticeships in our region to ensure the industry has the workforce that it needs?
Yeah, that is such a huge issue. One of the things that we have challenges with, and we'll talk about this when we talk about healthcare and other things, is a shortage of skilled people, skilled labor, doctors, nurses, skilled trades, all the things. So we've been working really, really hard. Andrew Mercier, for a while, he was working on this file. We have some really, really good trades programs moving forward. The other thing that's really important too is we're moving towards compulsory trades too as well, because you saw the cranes, for example, that were falling down and things like that. And it's not just about training the people we need for these positions, it's also about safety. You've got to think about, we can't be having cranes fall down. And a lot of that has to do with training. So the operating engineers, for example, now will be able to train folks up. But we have a very robust program for skills training within our ministries, and with BCIT and with so many others within the schools. We're working with many of the high schools. Riverside over in Mission, a really good example of a program that builds trades. And so totally agree that we need to double down on trades training, and we're doing that. The other thing is, when you have big projects, make sure you have an apprenticeship program. And that was something that the previous government really got rid of, was this whole idea of apprenticeships. We're making sure that when we do big projects, we have the different unions and the different groups in there, that we're training that next generation of skilled labor. We need them. And so really we need to make sure that all those projects bring those new trades in.
Thank you. And sort of moving into schools, you mentioned schools, so it's kind of a good segue. Let's talk about that. Schools are overcrowded, but we're told new schools can't be built until the existing ones are nearly full. Some schools are below capacity, while others are over capacity. How will you support building new schools in these growing areas?
That's an excellent question. And so another group that Lisa Bear and I work with, of course, are the school boards. The school district 42 and 75 in Mission, I work with them. And so the school boards actually look at the priorities of what they need within their school boards. And it's really important then to work with them to try to make sure that their priorities are met. And so I would say that, again, we have an excellent relationship with the school board chairs, with Elaine, and we really work well with them. And the idea is they come to us and say, these are what we need, and you need to go and advocate. And the nice thing is, when you have someone like Lisa and me, the ministers can't get away, because we can trap them in the corner, and they can't actually, we box them in, right? So, but all kidding aside, you really do need to advocate. And we did that for the Meadows High School. We did that for Mission High School. And because there was a time when it wasn't getting into the capital plan quick enough, and we're like, no, we need this now, and we advocated really hard for that. So we do work really, really hard for that. Another example of that is Eric Lincoln, for example. We're rebuilding that, which is really important to look at those seismic replacements and those seismic upgrades. And one really cool thing that's happening now is, instead of portables, starting to build prefabricated additions to schools, and the school districts are starting to do that. And there's a couple of advantages of that. One is, portables come out of their operating budget. So that means they're having to choose between operating issues and not. These programs actually not only add to the school itself, but it comes out of the capital budget, which is great. So that actually frees up room for their operating. So they not only get a school, it could be like this. It would be an addition to a school which is permanent. It just happens to be prefabricated. So you may hear, no, you're just putting portables. No, that's not what it is. It's actually a technology to actually add to the size of the school. So that's really important. And the other thing is trying to be proactive. One of the things we did when we opened Sescanella, which is an elementary school in Albion, at the same time, the minister said, hey, and we're going to buy another piece of land in Albion so that we're proactively thinking about the future, which is what was done. So I think that's really important. And we look at Mission, for example, that's the whole Silverdale area with the polygon development, that's going to be growing. We really have to think, okay, ahead, instead of being reactive, be proactive. And I've talked at length with the minister about this. It really is important to get in front of some of these issues, especially in growing areas like ours.
Thank you. Now let's transition to healthcare.
Sure.
Healthcare shortages, especially in emergency rooms, among doctors and nursing staff, has severely impacted our community, particularly Mission. Mission's ER often can't be staffed and is effectively closed, leaving residents with even fewer options for urgent care. What specific actions will you take to address these critical healthcare staffing shortages and ensure that our emergency rooms, doctors, and nursing services are adequately resourced to provide timely and quality care for our residents?
That's an excellent question. And we all know that during the pandemic, a lot of stress was put on our healthcare system. And coming out of that, it's been really tough. And this isn't something, the stresses on the healthcare system aren't just British Columbia, it's the whole country. And in fact, many issues, it's actually global. But certainly without Canada, there's a lot of stress on our public healthcare systems. So what does that mean? Well, in Mission, for example, we need more emergency room doctors. The problem, of course, it takes years to train a doctor, and we are building a new school in Surrey, which is fantastic. Of course, the opposition sold the land for that. It would have been built earlier, but that's a whole other issue. What we're trying to do is get more doctors, and the David Eby actually announced today, which is what's so important, is to get those foreign-trained doctors in jurisdictions that we know are compatible with ours, that they can just come and work a lot faster. Because we actually have a lot of doctors who are waiting to work here or come here to work and just can't get that accreditation. And that is critical. So that is something that we're really going to work hard on. The other thing that's really important, and this is not emergency room doctors because that's very specialized, is also our commitment to the hospitals itself. The previous government that John Rastad was involved in tried to shut down the Mission Hospital. We fought hard to keep that hospital alive. We are committed to that. In fact, we just put $7.5 million along with another $1.3 million of local money into a new CT scanner. So we are committed to that hospital. Same with the Ridge Meadows Hospital. We put a MRI in there. We're putting more resources in there. So it's really important. In addition to that, we have urgent and primary care centers in Maple Ridge and in Mission now, to sort of try to take the pressure off some of the emergency rooms and attach people to family doctors. And the big issue is family doctors as well. For the first time in 20 years, we're actually seeing the number of family doctors attached, the number actually grow to the point where we're actually seeing a movement the other direction, where people are getting attached to doctors. And a lot of that has to do with the change of the payment model. So our government changed the payment model so that doctors actually get paid and their administration is separate. And it made a huge difference. We have over 800 new doctors in the system. We've hired over 40,000 healthcare workers in the system, and we need to do more. Now, John Rastad has already talked about major cuts to healthcare. So what does that look like? That means less doctors. That means less building. That means that this is the time we need to invest in healthcare. This is not the time to cut.
Thank you. And moving over to environment. Given the increasing urgency of addressing climate change and advancing sustainability across BC, what specific actions will you take to support and strengthen initiatives aimed at combating climate change?
Again, excellent question. And climate change is real. Unfortunately, John Rastad doesn't think it's real. So if you have a leader of a party who's trying to be the premier of this province, and you don't believe that man-made climate change is real, that's going to affect the policies that you have. Well, we believe in the science, we believe in the climate science, and we believe that we need to do what we need to do in order to show a great example to the world and take those important steps that everyone knows we need to take in order to fight climate change. And we've been doing that through rebate programs for electric vehicles or heat pumps and those types of things. But there's some bigger issues here too, is the big polluters. Now the difference between John Rustad and what he's promising and what we're promising is, look, we recognize that the consumer-based carbon tax is tough on folks from an affordability point of view. So we're saying, look, if the federal government reduces that, we'll reduce that. The difference is, because John Rustad doesn't believe there's a crisis, he's talking about cutting carbon tax for big companies, big oil and gas companies, and we think that is the wrong approach, that we feel that the big polluters need to continue to pay, and that is why we have a price on carbon, and we're going to continue that, and that's really important. The other thing to do is just recognize the costs here. So if you cut, as John Rustad is thinking, all that revenue out, how are we going to, it was over $1 billion to fight wildfires. We've got floods. We've got to mitigate those floods. We've got to deal with the aftermath of floods. We've got heat domes. We've got all these things that are happening that are caused by climate change. We're seeing it, and particularly in British Columbia. So we also have to have revenue to deal with the effects of climate change. So we have to take the steps to fight climate change. We need to adapt so that we can build areas to keep cities and towns safe. And we need to take steps to actually lower our carbon footprint, which is what we're doing. So the Clean BC plan is one of the most robust plans in the North America, and we're committed to that, and we're going to keep going on that. George Heyman was the minister there, and he done exemplary work over his time. He's retiring now, but you know, we are absolutely committed to doing what we need to do for climate change.
Thank you for that. I'm going to shift over to mental health. I have a few questions for you. Considering the growing mental health challenges and increased anxiety amongst children across the province, what steps will you take to improve access to mental health support and resources for young people in British Columbia?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And we, again, with the pandemic and with social media and with phones and with all these things, we've seen a big increase in mental health issues with young people, anxiety and so many things. And so it is so important to recognize that. One of the things that we've done, we opened a foundry in Maple Ridge, which is really important to deal with mental health and addiction issues with children particularly. So it is really set up to be very responsive to their needs. You know, and so it's a really great program. The other thing we've set up within schools are called ICY teams, where they're actually meet the kids where they're at, you know, and say, okay, this is where we need to be. We're really proud of the fact that we were able to open a youth emergency shelter. That was something that Lisa and I ran on for years, and we were able to get that. So if kids are really having a tough time, they have somewhere to go and get connected to the mental health services that they need, which is really important. So I absolutely agree with you that we need to, meet them in the schools. We need to continue to increase the number of foundries that we have. We need to make sure that we get to that preventative side of things. Because I have a brother who, unfortunately, last year passed away. He was severely mentally ill. And one of the things they say is if you deal with the mental health issue, especially if it's severe early, you can really head it off, and that person can probably have a relatively normal life. If you let it go until they're in an adult situation, then it can just get more and more profound, and then it gets to the point where it's really difficult to deal with. So I think that not only is it great to deal with youth mental health, it's also important to look at how important that is as part of the 4 pillars dealing with mental health and addictions of prevention. So we can deal with these things ahead of time so that kids don't end up in a situation where it's much, much worse for them. So I absolutely agree this is a priority, and I know it's a priority for our government.
Thank you for that. Recently, David Eby announced that British Columbia will be opening secure facilities to provide involuntary care under the Mental Health Act for those with severe addictions who are mentally ill and have sustained brain injury. There are two questions around this topic. One, and we'll just do them one at a time. Could you please provide some clarification around what this looks like, and also how it affects the Elwood Corrections Center in Maple Ridge, which is the site designated to be the first site in the province?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I've actually had a number of people in the community ask me that question, and I was able to get briefed on this shortly after the announcement. So the key here is that most folks are able to access voluntary services, voluntary care. There are a few within that group of folks that are having a really tough time. There's a bunch of folks who really are struggling. They can't make they've got brain damage from having overdoses and being brought back, or they had previous mental health conditions, they've got severe addiction issues, and they just simply can't take care of themselves. So a lot of those folks are actually in psychiatric wards already. And the problem is these tertiary beds that are supposed to be temporary are becoming more and more permanent. So and the problem is those wards are not set up for long-term care. So the idea, it's going to be in Monarch homes, which is basically not in the prison. So we have to make sure that everybody knows this is not part of the prison system. This is a healthcare issue. So it just happens that they have the facility that's appropriate to be able to do this beside the prison. So it will be a secured area. We'll start with 6 people. It will go up to 20. And the people that will be chosen from this, and this is something, again, very important why cooperation between the province and the city is so critical, is the mayor quite rightfully said, look, if we're going to be hosting this first one here, let's make sure that we can help some people locally. And, the health authorities agreed to that. So that is a really good example of us working together closely with really tough situations. But, some people were concerned about what it would look like. It's a secured facility. Those people will be there for a very long time. It's meant for long-term care, and they'll be dealing with profound mental health and addiction issues. They will have 100% supports there. The other great thing is because it's a green space, they will have, right now, a lot of the folks are going out into a cement area and can have a smoke or something. In this area, they'll have a nice green space. It'll be a lot nicer for them to be able to live their lives in a sort of, we hope, a very dignified way. And that's the most important thing, is this is about dignified care. Now, we don't want to be people thinking that we're just rounding people up. This is a very small number of people within the group that need help, that simply don't have that capacity to be able to make those decisions.
Thank you. What would you say, this question too, on the same topic, what would you say to the NDP critics who view this policy change as flip-flopping?
Yeah, it's not flip-flopping. We've been looking at this for a long time. In fact, there was some legislation brought in a few years ago that we were trying to look at involuntary care, and the reality is there are charter challenges. There's a number of civil libertarian groups that were challenging this, and understandably, people, when you take somebody's liberty away, you have to be very, very careful. This is a free society, right? So we understand that. So there have been some attempts to do this. The people we're talking about here are already people who can be sectioned under the Mental Health Act. So we're not talking about creating something new. This is just finding somewhere long-term for them to live. They're the ones who are the first 6 are already in psychiatric wards. That were not meant for them to be there. It's similar to the hospital when you have seniors who should be in long-term care who are taking up ICU beds. It's a similar kind of thing. We need to build long-term care. We need long-term mental health housing. We lost that with Riverview, right? And never got replaced. So this is part of the moving back towards having that sort of long-term care, which is so important. I don't think it's changing. It's supplementing what we're already doing.
Okay, thank you. And last question around mental health. What specific steps will you take to address the growing unhoused crisis and related mental health challenges in our community? And how can the provincial government support municipalities in managing this issue while ensuring long-term resources for those affected across BC?
Yeah, so there's approximately 8,000 unhoused people in British Columbia right now, and our homeless count in Maple Ridge is about 135. And people are, understandably concerned about their welfare and what they can, where they can live and how they're interacting in the community, and I get that. We did have at one point a tent city when Lisa and I took over in 2017 as MLAs. It was a really tough time, and we were able to get people into housing. Now, unfortunately, that's again a very good example of a city council that fought us every step of the way. We ended up resolving that tent city by building the housing we needed, and it was temporary on Royal Crescent. It was supposed to be temporary, and then when we tried to get permanent housing, that government blocked us again. And so, really, it upsets me that that location should be seniors housing already, so again, it's a very good example of different levels of government working together. And I can say from the bottom of my heart, the council right now, we're working extremely well together with them, trying to find these solutions that are important. One of the projects, for example, is we've been working really closely with the Salvation Army to try to get to a place where we can get a proper facility for them, because the facility they're in right now was never meant for what it's being used for. And people end up having to go in and out, like all the time. But if we can get some more permanent housing, that would be really helpful, I think. So I think housing is very important, getting people the supports they need. One of the things we added to in Maple Ridge was complex care, which is very important because there's some folks who need that extra help. We've done that in Maple Ridge, and now we're doing it in Mission in the new Hurd Street supportive housing that's just opening up now. So housing is really important, making sure that we get them the help that they need. And then for those folks who need more help, make sure they have even more wraparound services with complex care. And then for those folks who really can't fit into any of that and are in the hospital system, that we'd have involuntary care. So it's sort of this continuum of help. But the main thing is we need to house people. And that's been, hopefully we'll get the housing, because that's one of the key issues around everything, frankly.
And let's get the housing.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so what are your views on densification, and how do you plan to support the municipalities with the costs around the infrastructure?
Again, an excellent question. A couple of years ago, we were very lucky we had planned on a deficit, and we ended up recovering much quicker than we thought from the pandemic, and we had a surplus, and we were able to give $1 billion to all the municipalities with the Growing Communities Fund, and that's a really good example. In Maple Ridge, they were able to use some of that for widening Abernathy, and we're working really hard with them to try to look at, for example, the BRT system, which is a bus rapid transit system that would link up with the new Langley SkyTrain. We can talk about that later, but the whole point is that type of infrastructure is needed. So if you're going to densify, you need to have the schools, you need to have the healthcare, you need to have all of those things. So as a partner, what we're saying is, okay, if we're going to densify, let's densify around transit hubs. Let's densify around, if we're going to have a SkyTrain hub, let's densify around there, because then people don't need as many cars, for example. They can take the SkyTrain, or my wife takes the West Coast Express every day. There's some really great opportunities there, and same with the BRT. If we get that, like, can we look at those? So making sure that the infrastructure and the building work together, and so that's something that David Eby has been talking a lot about. And one of the key there is to do that, you need to spend money. And this means there's two parts of the budget. On Treasury Board, you learn this. There's the operating budget, and that's the capital budget. And capital budget is kind of like your mortgage. You amortize it over 50 years, So those are things like you're building the schools, you're building the hospitals, you're building that infrastructure that we need. We have embarked on the most aggressive building of infrastructure in the province's history for roads, for Highway 1, Highway 7, hospitals, schools, all of these things that we're building. And that is so that we can support the growing communities, And we've got some challenges. I mean, we've got 500,000 people have signed up to MSP in the last 3 years. We've got 10,000 people moving into BC every 37 days. So we already have challenges, and you add on top of that folks coming in. And it's because we have jobs and because we're an incredible place to live, and there's a lot of opportunity here. So that's really important. So I agree, when you densify, it's important, but you have to make sure that you do it responsibly, sustainably, and with the infrastructure to support that. And I worry that John Rustad, he's already talking about massive cuts to the capital budget, which means what's not going to get built? Is it going to mean the high schools? I don't know. Does it mean that we're not going to have more Highway 1 work? I don't know. But I don't know, and that's why I'd hoped that the other candidate was going to be here. I could ask him.
Thank you for that. And on housing as well, given that the availability of affordable housing affects our community at large, what are your proposals to increase access to affordable housing in Maple Ridge and Mission?
Yeah, affordable housing is a tough word in itself. If you say affordable housing, what does that mean? So, I've got kids who are renting. I've got one who managed to purchase, the rest are renting, and the rents are, quite high. So the key is, what can we do to make sure that rents are reasonable for rentals? So one of those is we put in, you can't raise the rents higher than the cost of living. Before, it was the cost of living plus 2%. So that meant rents could go up a lot. So we've managed to keep rental rates lower. And actually, for the first time since we have been bringing in our programs, like the speculation tax that put 20,000 units back into the market, the short-term rental program that basically there was a study that just came out that said that rental rates have gone down $150 a month. Those are the kinds of things that we need to keep going. And those are the kinds of things that John Rustad is planning to cut. So we really have to, it's a clear choice. Do we keep doing the things we need to do to deal with keeping rents down, building, and then we need to build the supply. We need to build the supply. And so that's really important. So we have a lot of programs with BC Housing, for example, with BC Builds. That's going to be really exciting because that's partnering with people on Crown land or public lands to build. So there's a lot of different programs to get that supply going, and that's really important. So it's dealing with the policies and trying to get as many units in as possible, and then building that affordable housing. For purchasing, that's really interesting. I don't know if you saw this latest announcement in the Musqueam Sautus, the Squamish project in Vancouver, of actually new purchasers being able to pay 60% and then government taking a 40% mortgage for 25 years to allow people to get into the market that could not normally get into the market. So that's a pretty exciting new program that could, if it works out well, be rolled out for people purchasing as well. So that's really exciting. But on the rental side, it's a growing issue for, let's say, seniors. And when you say affordable housing, an example of that is, for example, the seniors housing we're building on Royal Crescent. That housing is going to be below market. And the reason we can do that is that BC Housing bought the building, and BC Housing's building the building, and then getting Vista to manage it. And the idea there is that we'll be able to have over 90 units of affordable below market housing. And we're going to need a lot more of that for seniors, for young families, for people. And that's the plan. Again, those programs that get cut, and we can't afford that.
Thanks. Transportation.
Mm-hmm.
What is your party's vision and priorities for transportation infrastructure in our communities?
Well, once again, it's really important to look at things like the West Coast Express. We created that back in the day, and it's an incredible service. I couldn't have moved out here. I worked in Vancouver. My wife takes it every day. I know many people use it every day. It's a great service. It was fun, actually. We got to go down, and I got to see the new engines that they've built. They've got a lot of new facilities, a lot of new trains that they've been able to build, and so there's been some enhancements to that, which is fantastic. But we know we need more. We've got the rapid bus that goes Haney to Coquitlam, which is great. It's running well, and we've actually been able to show to TransLink that we're actually above. We've actually returned and surpassed our ridership, which is fantastic because that makes the case for more transportation. So again, you look at the mayor, look at council, and what they've been able to do to lobby the mayor's council and TransLink to be the first to get into that bus rapid transit system. And that's where the partnership's going to come in. We're going to have to work really hard with the city and with the province and with TransLink to get that funded, and so that we can connect with the new Langley SkyTrain station. And that could be a game changer. It's a really cool technology for those who don't understand it. It goes down the middle of the road. It's kind of like a train on wheels. The actual doors are like up here, and you're like going to a train station. They look like trains, they act like trains. They just happen to be going down the middle of the road, and there's a lot of cities that have used that. So I'm really excited about the future of transit. Of course, get a lot of people from Mission who are, say, okay, well, what about us? Because my riding, half of it ends up going to, half of it's TransLink and half of it's, BC Transit. So how does that all work together? And that's a challenge, and we're working on that a lot. On the driving side, getting the final 4-laning of Highway 7 was huge. That was, if I think of the projects that I was able to get as an MLA, and that was really cool because Dan Rumi was actually the MP at that time, and it was something I'm really proud of. We were able to work together in that circumstance to get that funded. And if you're driving down there now, you can see they're building it right now, and it's so exciting because it's not just about a faster commute. We had, in like 4 years, 80 accidents there. We had fatalities, we have had injuries, and it's just the people in Wanaka, every time I talk to them, are like, fix this, right? So I'm like, yes, I hear you. So it became a really big deal. And I remember sitting in John Horgan's office saying, we need this. And he's like, no, it's too expensive. We need it. Finally relented. So I'm really proud of that one.
Thank you. I have one more question before I give you closing statements. So we're moving along.
Oh, really? Already?
I know.
Just,
well, when there's
everyone's
only,
like,
there's only one.
They're probably like, yeah,
okay. This is about voters.
Okay.
Given the recent changes and eventual collapse of the BC United Party, what message would you share with former BC United voters, whether present tonight or watching later? Why should they consider supporting you, even though their former leader, Kevin Falcon, has endorsed the Conservatives?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah, we are in kind of crazy times these days, and when you had 50 candidates in BC United just get dumped like that, and as much as I, politically don't get along with a lot of them, I do feel really bad for a lot of my colleagues who were MLAs who, worked for many years and then all of a sudden gone, and so I do feel they just got let go. And I think ideologically, though, if you look at who's gone over to, who's been allowed to come into the BC Conservatives and who got left out, you can see that the folks that were closer to the center in terms of their politics were left out. So John Rustad and frankly Falcon, he had moved United to the right, and then of course we've got a guy in John Rustad who I had to sit beside for months in the House, basically going on about anti-LGBTQ stuff, the schools, teachers. I don't even like saying it, like they're grooming children. It was gross. It was gross. And so unfortunately, we've got a leader who doesn't believe that climate change is real, who buys into conspiracy theories on vaccinations, who's got members who are anti-LGBTQ, and that's what that party's become, unfortunately. So there's a whole bunch of folks who are a little bit more moderate, might be a bit more fiscally conservative, but don't have a home. So I would say to them, look at our party, look at us. We're trying really hard to help businesses, to help grow our economy, to make sure that we can, have safe schools for our kids and that they learn well, that we build the housing your kids need and that your grandparents need. That's who we have affordable childcare. I mean, these are all the things that actually, if you think about it, they're not partisan. They're just good policy, and that's what I would hope that they would look at David Eby and just say, look at our party and say, look, we're doing things that are best for the province because we always put people first. And that's what we've done every single day when we get up. We look at policy and we go, okay, regardless of anything else, what is the best thing for people? So I would like them to look at us and say, hey, you know, we can work together, and we'd love to obviously have them with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for answering those questions. I know we touched on a variety of topics, but I'd like to give you some time as well to do a closing statement. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover, or anything you'd like to wrap up with? So we'll give you 3 minutes for that.
Well, thanks, Jerry, and thanks again to the Chamber for hosting this. And again, I am disappointed that we didn't have the other candidate here. It would have been good to have heard that, what they had to say, because one of the things that I'm perplexed about with the BC Conservatives is they keep saying they're going to cut revenues, that they don't believe in any deficit, they don't believe in any of this stuff, but then what are they going to cut? And they've already said they're going to cut healthcare. You know, how are we going to improve healthcare if we cut healthcare? We need to put more money into healthcare. We have a deficit in infrastructure that is not just from now. It happened over a generation. So now we're playing catch up. And the longer we leave for these capital projects and these things we need to do, the more expensive they get. So what I'm saying is that I really hope that people can support us, that David Eby has a really good and strong vision for getting some things done in this province on housing, on healthcare, on affordability. I mean, right now, ICBC, you're getting $500 less, you know, a year than you were before, on average. I mean, I know some kids who are paying thousands of dollars less, you know. So ICBC, we got rid of MSP premiums, we got rid of the tolls on the bridges. You know, we're really thinking about how can we make life better for people in this province. And so we're going to continue to do that by building the housing that we need, by investing in the healthcare that we need, by investing in the education that we need, by fighting climate change. And these are the things that we need to do. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we do this in a responsible way. And as I said, I was on Treasury Board, and I promise you that, you know, we actually ran, over 7 years, we ran 5 balanced budgets. And I know the opposition is making hay about this, but the reality is it doesn't matter what party you're in, every jurisdiction in North America is running deficits right now because of the pandemic. And we're committed to getting to balance during our term, and we're going to do that. But, you know, in terms of our credit rating, we are, you know, we've got a AAA credit rating with Moody's. Yeah, there's been a little bit of a nudge on that, but that's because we're building, okay? We have the highest, you know, growth in per capita other than PEI. Sorry. PEI has slightly higher GDP than we do growth, but, you know, we've got the lowest unemployment. So we've got a really good thing going. And I think that we need to support that moving forward and support David Eby. And I can just say to everybody that I will always keep working for you. Like, when you come to our office or you need help, our offices are always there for you. We do the best we can to get answers as quickly as we can for you. And I'll always fight for Maple Ridge and Mission forever. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. I also again want to thank everybody on behalf of the Ridge Meadows Chamber of Commerce for spending your evening with us, or at least a part of your evening.